Hi. The Spirit of St. Louis was not a Williams Brothers, it's a Glencoe models. That's the simpler of the two, which, to be honest, for such a simple and old kit, I've actually enjoyed quite a bit. And it's going to be good to get that painted and get those few decals on. Not a big deal at all. Now, while the engine's just going to get sprayed body color on the initial spray, and then afterwards I'll do the bit of engine color work, black cylinders and what have you, a bit of dry brushing. The wheels, of course, have that silver and then the black rubber, which involves circular masking. Not one of my strong suits. I've done it with blue tack, and I do have some new blue tack which hopefully will not sort of deteriorate. You know, it's nice when the blue tack stays somewhat rubbery and comes off very easily afterwards, but it doesn't. I don't know what the lifespan of that is. So this is going to be, I think, one of my sort of highlight models for display purposes, for such a very simple one. Quite a big decal which has to go over all of those ribs, but I don't really foresee that being much of a problem. So that'll be good. Now, one of you mentioned, and this is amazing about situational blindness. You know that at my local Air Museum, at Wigram Air Museum, there is the Canberra standing front and center, and every time I go and visit it, I just walk right past it. And then when one of you said, yeah, but you know, Australia gave you guys one and it's on display or in storage there. Yeah, it's on display right there. And I'm like, no, I wonder where that is. I've walked past it every single time. And it's because of how badly lit it is. They have got that hanger in a, well, they've got two weird things. They've got very, very, very dimly lit. I mean, I can understand that dimly lit for certain reasons for not deterioration of very important aircraft paint, but not on something like a Canberra. It's also been cordoned off by barriers and placed next to other aircraft so that you can't walk around it. Basically, you've only got a view somewhere around here and sort of from a distance. You can't really get to it much at all. So I'll see what photos I can take when I get there again. Museum's not far from here. But it shows you about my blindness. I'm so used to ignoring it that I had to really think about the fact that it is there. And it is the one that I'm building it's a B20, I think it is, from Australia. And the Airfix 148 has got a B20 variant. This one still just needs its canopy on. One of my bad habits is leaving last details unnecessarily when I could have finished that. Oh, I wanted to show you this. So the other little vampire will be coming up soon, and you've seen me do a vampire in previous one. Obviously one of the smallest jets, but you know, you put that in scale there and you start realizing that the Canberra is somewhat of a large aircraft, although it does stand very low. And one of you did mention that the very low stance of the Canberra is one of the reasons that its external stores load is limited, although I'm not sure, because it can, and the fuel tanks are there, so I guess as long as they're close. Anyway, we'll see when I get to visiting that, when I get to putting on the external stores, and when I visit the museum. I'm not sure what they've got on underneath in the museum. And I do still also need to get to the other Buccaneer, you know, properly painted Buccaneer. But that's quite amazing, this tiny, I know I'm ignoring the tail booms, which should be included, but the main part of the fuselage, quite a significant difference. This Matchbox Canberra, you know, the more I look at it afterwards, the more, despite some hassles with building, minor hassles with the fit of fuselage joints, actually a very, very good aeroplane. Okay, B1 wings, which I haven't glued, but I just want to show you the size. So the Shackleton, because I mean this last section inside the wing, inside the fuselage, I mean, can sort of ignore. B1 wing is a little bit bigger than a Shackleton wing, so gluing wise, sort of somewhat similar to that. This one was very good, so I'm not expecting any hassles there. This one, slight but still pretty good, just with the finger pressure while holding it in drying. So I'll be doing this today. After cleaning off the little tree connections, do some good test fitting and check the leading edge match and the trailing edge match, and decide whether you want to keep the pins. And I've got to remind myself, don't go and glue this without that thing in. Have I got that in here? No, I'll probably put that on my workbench. So I really need to remind myself, don't go and glue that part in. I did clean this very nicely with detergent. Check if you need the pins, otherwise take them off. Now this is going to make it rather awkward, because we are going to have two main wings glued and attached now by that joint piece before I'm sort of ready to do things with the fuselage. And I'd probably want, or maybe want to paint this first. It wouldn't be a bad idea to paint the wings first, which would save the hassle of the part that goes partially under into the fuselage. That would give a nice even paint job all over and somewhat easier to handle. But we've got this joint which is certainly not going to withstand manhandling two wings connected by this semi-flimsy piece of plastic. It's not flimsy once it's in the fuselage, but it's certainly flimsy at this point. So I'm going to have to give that a little bit of thought. There is another way that one could do this. So instead of keeping that pin, it is possible that I could take the pin off and then put a screw through there, a metal screw, which would have to end up being flush with that and filled afterwards. And is it worth the effort? I'm definitely not jumping to that idea, so I'm just saying, pondering options so that the wings could be built without the connection piece on right at the time, and you could then fit the connection piece and just put the screw through, sort of a bit like Tamiya kits. It would not be as strong because the screw mount into the plastic wouldn't have enough grip to the one end. Okay, this is what I wanted to show you. So that both horizontal stabilizers are built, glued, and this has now got a little bit of play on it because this is only just pressed into there. The one side fits in a lot tighter than the other side, and the reason for that is, so this one I did first, and with the pins on, the leading edge was not matching up perfectly, and hence of course not the trailing edge either here. So I decided to get rid of the pins and glue this perfectly matching. Now I don't know if it was a mold problem of theirs, but that square notch, which you can see is actually still square, but it may have shifted ever so slightly from what it was with the pins present. So much so that this squared piece to fit into there is now slightly compressed. It's a slight rectangle, not a perfect square anymore. Not that you can see it from that side. So I had to do a little bit of scraping, and it's a nice tight fit. And once it's glued in, that's great. The other side, I kept the pins because it did match very well, and I didn't have any reason to remove the pins. So that side goes in as they would have intended. But that's pretty good. It's a nice straight nice straight elevator leading edge and trailing edge, and what I most wanted to show you was the strength of that. You're not going to break this without a huge amount of force. So that steel pin in there, is going to withstand bumps and knocks on the aeroplane. It can withstand us test fitting it, and a little bit of manhandling accidental. Whereas if that was not there, if I didn't put that steel pin through there, this very thin little piece of plastic would absolutely not hold up. So this is ready to spray, and they'll be sprayed independently, and it's somewhat nice because you can fit a little piece of sprue into there, stretched sprue, to hold it while you're spraying. Put that onto a clamp. And this part can be sprayed independently as well if you wanted. I can't see any specific reason because it should fit reasonably easy into here, although I probably will put it in and spray it one shot. But am I going to fill that joint? I'm not sure. Oh, one of you mentioned about using Mr. Surfacer on the Shackleton fuselage. I don't have Mr. Surfacer itself, but I do have, I think, a Tamiya Surfacer. So I tried that out. We'll see how that goes. Sort of brushed, halfway between paint and a filler. I did try that out. I don't think I would use that on here, but as I was thinking about it, there is an alternative to trying to use plastic fillers into there, and that is using the, I don't know what you call them, house type fillers, speckle. I don't even know what the more current names are of the variety of things. Sort of wall sealing things. You very easy to go in, very easy to come out, and there's probably a modeling version as well. Actually, please comment if you know the modeling version. So it's basically a water-based filler that is not as strong or robust as Tamiya filler. As plastic fillers, it sands, and in fact it's almost like you put it on and then wipe it off while it's still wet, and it's sort of a quick and easy seal for a joint exactly like that. No, this is not glued, so that's a little bit over over exaggerated there. The point being that this fits in ridiculously better than the Vulcan did. The Vulcan was an absolute nightmare. So if I show you this side, this is a lot better, and it's almost acceptable, but it probably would be nice just not to have that join line there. And while I see that, we have this piece. We have this piece which also goes into this wing joint, though I'm not exactly sure why they would have molded that as a separate piece. I'll just check that on the instructions. I'm not sure why that would have been separate, but a second thing to remember. Okay, what I have done with the fuselage, with about 400 sandpaper, and I think I'm finished. I might just need, no, I don't think I need to go over it again before gluing. I went down every edge, and you know, when you've sanded it, I'm sure all of you know what I'm talking about. When you sand the edge of a surface that should end flat, when you're sanding it, you can see the reflection as to whether you've still got that little bit of a lip, which I often talk about from the molding process. So while this is supposed to be ending dead flat like that, it ends with a little up edge which needs sanding. So sort of it actually takes a fair bit to get it to the point where you can then judge by the reflection to the light that you now have the top surface and the bottom surface without that little edge, so that when you give that pressure with your fingers on a single piece of the joint, and just a reminder that I probably will, I may take the pins off. When I put that pressure on to try and get that perfect joint, I'm not battling against a tiny lip there as well. I've got flat surface joining flat surface. And you'll remember that I said it's this specific curvature up the wing here is far less of a concern, because it's quite easy to get that nice tight curve. You still do a nice joint, but it's this flat section of the fuselage here that you really don't want any step or joint. So I will be taking it very easy. Now I think we did also mention previously, and I think one of you commented, that maybe doing this back section first would be not a bad idea. It helps you keep the two pieces together, so that I'd be not having to, you know, worry about the two pieces. I only need to focus on getting that right. This is already taken care of, so I probably will do that. Before I do that, of course, those bulkheads need to get in. But what I am doing now is I'm preparing for the fact that when I'm gluing and holding, that I have the best chance of getting the best fit there. Probably a little bit more flat sanding. So just going around all of the edges, because on this B1, it just so happens that the way they've run that joint line, basically a tangent to that curve would be 90 degrees. So you just hold your sandpaper so that it's basically flatting that joint, and it hardly takes off anything. It just helps you get that little bit of a molding ridge off. This section here, you can do a little bit of sanding just to get the ridge off there. You can actually, well, you can feel it, but you see that last little tiny ridge just on there, which is the same all the way around everything. So that's what you're getting off. So yes, probably fuselage gluing will be a few days away. It'll be preparation, test fitting, and the wings will be the thing to get right. I am a little bit, I do need to solve that thing, because I don't know. Okay, sometimes I make a bit of a bigger deal than out of something than it should be. But if I'm gluing that attachment piece in, it means that for all the rest of whatever I'm doing with those wings, I have to hold it in such a way that I'm not putting pressure on that. But maybe it's okay. Maybe it's not such a big deal. Also need to go around the wings, cleaning that same thing, making sure that you've got a very nice surface edge. There you can see some flash. Make sure that those edges are very good. The B1 wings are hugely better than the A380 wings, which I now took off and cleaned up completely, took off all of those sort of horrible tree joints, including the horizontal stabilizers. Now the A380, the stabilizers are not the worst. They're very thin pieces, and this one is close to perfect. This one is close to perfect. I had to watch for, you've got this very sharp little edge here, which is very easy to damage, as well as that little tip, which is easy to damage. And I think on one, was it on these? Might not have been on these that they were damaged. But that one, do you see that wave? Now what that is I don't know if I'm going to be able to get you that reflection. So right about that point there is where one of those flat tree connectors was. And this part has bent upwards away from that tree connector, so the tree connector has caused that. And this is very, very thin. So thin that putting this in hot water is going to cause more problems than it solves. So we've got this thin and somewhat easily movable section to get it straight, but it's going to be a bit of a problem when you get to there. And as I've said, because that's somewhat of a strong pull to the one side, if I just glue this down, it's going to place irregular pressure on the other side. So you're going to end up with a wave if you're not careful. So I've got to do a little bit of thinking regarding that dip there. But the horizontal stabilizers are still better than the main wings. So these main wing molds, the pieces of plastic are quite lightweight and they are quite thin plastic. So this part of the curvature is correct. It does make that, but that part is not. But it's not a bad, it's a very easy one to fix when gluing because it's so thin. Two of these little edges I had to try and fix with a slight bit of warm water and pressure. This is a lower surface, so this curvature here is correct. The A380 has that sort of quite dihedral section on the bottom there. You can get an idea of how absolutely thin this wing is here, and hence the waviness of the extreme difficulty of allowing a large plastic mold to cool without distorting. That one is close to perfect. So we've got that correct dihedral, the correct bend, and the rest of that wing is very, very good. So that's a good wing. This is an upper surface, and you can see what that upper surface looks like. So quite large, and compare that to the B1. I'm not working on these yet, but I'm mentally trying to figure out how one would solve that. So that A380 in 144th scale is about double the size of a B1 in 1/72nd scale. And I have not built an aircraft with large wings which is also very thin plastic like that. So this is an area that I really need to be careful of, and when I decide to get to this one, so far I'm just trying to see if it's a worthy build. And the bigger problem is still that fuselage problem which I was talking about. So I will be gluing this next, because I've now showed you the horizontal stabilizers. This drum part will go into there, and I did mention that it's sort of got enough resistance, but let's just do a little test. Right, so I'll put both on. Okay, so without resistance, this is without friction. This is what will happen. In fact, this is rather heavy. Those tailplanes, once inside there, are quite heavy, so it relies on friction. Now, if I hold that tight, like it will be in the plane, once glued, it still has this quite strong tendency to drop like that. So, my thoughts in the last video regarding something to give a bit of friction against there. I may even need to rethink that in putting a piece of plastic to brush against one of those 4 ridges inside there. Yeah, it'll definitely need something to allow you to still position. So I'm thinking maybe 2 bits of plastic inside there, which run against one of those that fit against one of those 4 things, and then if you twist it, it can sort of budge up and down a little bit to allow you to position the all-flying tailplane, but have enough resistance to stop the item actually just tilting down. Which means that I'm going to show you that in a video once I've built that. So I can't glue those just yet. That is going to need some sort of clever device in there, and luckily there is space, so there's enough space to build stuff in there against that drum. I would assume that for anyone that builds the kit without building anything extra in there, the end result of what would happen is you'd build that in there, find that your horizontal stabilizers are not just staying where you want them to, and probably pop a bit of glue in there, which means that you don't end up with moving tailplane, and they're just fixed in a position. So I'm going to try and get to, I'll be doing a bit more sanding, the various things that I've spoken about, but the thing I would really like to get to is the painting of this. So I just need to get those struts glued on now. They're all ready. One of the notable features on this Glencoe models is the tailplane struts have no notch, no recess, no mark, no indication of anything as to where their position is. The main plane ones have got the little pins and the positioners, obviously. Tailplane ones don't. You know, that sort of speaks towards old-time modeling, where many things were left up to the modeler to figure out and get right or get wrong. Not a big deal. We get a little bit spoiled with everything being perfectly positioned on the modern stuff. Okay, that is me off back to the workbench. Cheers.